Hey guys, Leon Lewis here doing another video, and today I'm going to be doing my video on Star Wars, and more specifically today, Star Wars figures. And to everyone that didn't know, last year was the 40th anniversary of Star Wars, so in celebration and remembrance, Hasbro recreated the original 12 figure line that Kenner had created back in 1978 after the film released May 25th, 1977. So, interesting tidbit, back in 1977, when toys were made, they were usually made in the idea for like TV shows, because TV shows were always fresh in the kids' mind because they come on every week. Kids can see their favorite characters. But with movies, usually they didn't stay in the theater for more than maybe 1 or 2 months. And obviously that changed because with Star Wars, we see the movie stayed in the theater for 2 years, with some people seeing the movie up to 100 times alone. But with that, when Star Wars figures were first created, um, a lot of companies didn't want to have anything to do with it. Hasbro and a lot of other big companies just didn't see it as a good financial choice. So the rights of the Star Wars figures were given to this small company in Cincinnati, Ohio, named Kenner. And when they were making the figures, they were kind of like trying to get it up to speed, but they were really in no rush. So when the Star Wars ended up being a big hit, they had an unprecedented demand on their hands and they just couldn't reach the Christmas rush. So what they allowed people to do, kids and adults, was to buy a certificate that allowed them to get four of the figures from the original 12 line, and you can see here they're all recreated with two additional figures being the X-Wing Luke and the R5D4 with fan demand. But I have here one of the original figures that I was able to get at Star Wars Celebration, so you guys can see in reference to when I'm going over all the different figures. And today I'm going to be just going over each character, the figure, and then one scene that I really like with each character. So first, I'm going to start with Luke Skywalker. I love the mold of the character. Luke Skywalker is also my favorite character in the whole Star Wars whole Star Wars universe, and I'll go over that more in future videos. But today, we're just gonna go over the figures. As you can see, he has the lightsaber that Obi-Wan gives him. That was his father's. Then we have the binoculars that we see him use when he's looking for R2 when he goes off looking for Old Ben to pass the message that Leia sends in a hologram. Um, my favorite scene with Luke Skywalker will definitely have to be the binary sunset at the beginning of A New Hope, when you see he's just looking out and he sees the two suns, and I just feel like that one scene is like a turning point and the embodiment of all Star Wars is and what it stands for is what looks as a nobody just going out and just doing crazy things and overcoming obstacles that you would think is humanly possible, but it's just, and then we have John Williams score playing in the background with the Force theme, and it's a really beautiful scene. You see the back. I'm gonna show the back on this one and the last one just so you guys can see, but you can see all the original 12 line, and you can compare it to this. As you can see, these are 8 figures that they were trying to sell after, but you can see at this bottom thing right underneath the 12 original figure lines, and then they changed it here. And so the next figure that I'm going to go over is Leia. As you can see, she has the gun that she uses when they're in the prison block, and then she also has a laser pistol that we see. I don't remember if she used it. Yes, she did. We see it on the Battle of Endor, and then I also liked how she used it again in The Last Jedi. I think that's the same model. Don't hold me to that. But I remember exactly in 2017 when the news about Carrie Fisher, the actor that plays Leia, um, when she was on the plane and she had that event happen. And I remember exactly where I was, and I was heartbroken. I was just hoping and praying that she would get better. And then when the news that she had died, I was in my room, and instead of just dwelling on it and just letting it tear me down, I put in A New Hope and just watch her fantastic acting and her fantastic portrayal of this great character, and that's just it's literally how I coped with it and it got better. Definitely have to say my favorite scene with Leia Organa would have to be when Han Solo is being lowered into carbonite on Bespin, and she tells him, "I love you," and he says he knows. And I just think that is a grade A definition of when a actor is able to say so few words, but their facial expression says thousands. And I just love her as an actor. There's so many scenes that I love her in, but that scene definitely has to be my favorite. Next figure that we're going to be going over is Alec Guinness's version of Obi-Wan Kenobi. And I'm going to hold up this again because this is actually the figure that I got at the Star Wars Celebration. They're the same. And you can see that the articulation is different. You see you have the translucent lightsaber here. And then right here, it looks kind of like a candlestick sticking out of it. You see they didn't really have the materials to do anything really that fancy with it. I still have the figure, but we have the Jedi robes that he was in. And I love Obi-Wan as a character, especially Alec Guinness's version of him. And I just love... My favorite scene would have to be with him is the first scene we see with him in it, where he makes that dragon noise, kind of like Dovahkiin from Skyrim, and he scares the Sand People away, and just the whole interaction he has with R2 and Luke, where he says the hello there, the same thing that he says when he faces General Grievous back during the Clone Wars. We have him looking at R2 and saying he never owned a droid or doesn't remember owning a droid because he didn't. It was Anakin's. And then also I love that when he hears the name Obi-Wan Kenobi, because for years since the Jedi Purge, he has just been referred to as Old Ben, and you can see all the emotions rush back in his face. And I just love how, even though Alec Guinness didn't know all this backstory about Obi-Wan and the Clone Wars and stuff like that, only thing he knew was what George Lucas filled him in on. He was able to portray it, and the facial expression, again, just says so much more than what any actor could have said, and you could just see the emotion, everything just raw on his face. So I really love Alec Guinness's version of Obi-Wan. Stormtrooper, I don't think any version of the Stormtrooper or any other like iteration of it will be as iconic as the original Stormtrooper. You know, we have the Snowtrooper in Empire, then we have just all these different iterations. The Death Trooper of Rogue One, I have to put that up there. I really love what Gareth Edwards was able to do with that, and you know, the basically muzzled voice, and you just can't hear what they're saying, and just the articulation and the way the black just bounces off with the lights. But I love the Stormtrooper. Favorite scene would definitely have to be, I guess they're not a Stormtrooper per se, but with Luke and Han when they're going to the prison cell trying to help Leia escape, and just the whole interaction of them just Luke trying to convince Han because he's like a smuggler that she's rich and just all that. I just love that scene. That definitely had to be my favorite. Death Squad Commander, probably have to say this is my least favorite of the figure line. And I believe they only have one scene. I don't know if they're shown again in Rogue One, but I remember they had one scene in New Hope when they're powering up the Death Star laser and they're all at the command center and they're all getting started. I really like it's a nice figure, and it's probably my least favorite in the line again, but it's a really cool figure. The Sand People. I love how they're kind of like chaotic and crazy, but they're organized in a way per se. And I just love how, you know, they have the snipers, then they have the physical thing for the beating rod, and I love the noise that they make when they're just raising their staffs and guns. Favorite scene would have to be when they try to jump Luke. You know, you have the ones down in the canyon looking like they're just taking care of their animals, and then out of nowhere one just comes up into Luke's binoculars and just like starts to attack him, knocks him out, starts to like rob him and strip him and stuff like that. And then, you know, as I was saying, Obi-Wan comes out of nowhere with the dragon noise. But Love them. Love the character, not characters, but characters, I guess, in the portrayal of the creature. It's really cool. Then we'll move on to the Jawas. I love these cute little things. I love how they don't use weapons per se. I know they have that little like electric shooting thing that they use to capture R2, and that kind of ties into my favorite scene with them is when they use just like basic tactics where like they throw it on the rocks and just like make different noises everywhere to be able to kind of like bait R2 and get his senses off, and then they just shoot him with a laser bolt, and then they put a restraining bolt on him as they try to sell him to, Luke and Uncle Owen. And I just love, it's such a simple design, but it's so graceful with the way it does it, and I just love this figure a lot. Move on to R5D4. So here we have the R2 unit that was supposed to be sold to Uncle Owen and Luke Skywalker, but he blew up right at the end when he started rolling. And he may seem as like a throwaway character, but he's actually probably one of my favorite robots in the entire Star Wars universe. Even though he only has one scene, he's only there for like, I guess, a couple of minutes. But I love the design. I also love in the original trilogy how depending on what planet or wherever anybody was, they had this grime, and let me see if I get close enough. You can see like the dirt and kind of like right where it is, and I like how it's like showing that everything's not perfect and clean and pristine. And also, this figure was a GameStop exclusive, and I remember when I went to my GameStop, they sold out, and then they got another one I think 2 weeks later, but I wasn't able to get it. And I was on Twitter, and ThinkGeek, a partner with GameStop, had restocked it, and I ordered one, and then I was like, okay, I'm not going to be able to get this figure again, so I ordered a second one. And with a lot of the figures, I have probably 2 or 3 of each figure, but I really like this figure. Definitely the favorite scene is when he blows up, because, I mean, that's his only scene. But let's move on to the next one. RTD2, and I love this little droid. Probably my favorite droid in the whole Star Wars universe. You can see all the different tools he uses. He also has Luke Skywalker's lightsaber from Return of the Jedi, where he shoots it out, and then Luke does the flip to catch it, and then we have that whole encounter. But I love R2 as a character. My favorite scene with him would definitely have to be on Dagobah when Yoda is training Luke. And I just love how R2, he can just be sitting there in the back. He might be powered off sometimes, but I love how when Luke is lifting the rocks and then R2 just starts kind of like floating with him, it's just to show how powerful Luke is with the Force, and it's just like it's all around him, and it's just showing the whole interconnectivity of things. And that'll definitely have to be my favorite scene with R2. I also really like R2 because him and the next character I'm going to move over to, C-3PO, have been in every Star Wars movie to date, and I'm pretty sure they're going to be in the Solo film as well. I'm excited to see how they fit the cameo in there. So, yeah, that's why I love R2. He's a good character, a good little robot, very handy. He's been with everybody. He's helped everybody. Beautiful character. Let's move on to C-3PO, the talkative translator. I love the design. It's simple yet graceful. I also love... People will think that this was just like a robot and he was just like doing all his things, but this is actually a person inside him named Anthony Daniels, and he plays him so well, and it's just so crazy the movements and stuff that he's able to create to make him really believe and seem as an actual robot with the hand motion and stuff like that. It's really hard to do. It may seem like simple, but it's a really hard thing to do. Favorite scene with C-3PO would definitely have to be during Return of the Jedi when the Ewoks think that C-3PO is a god, and they have Han, Luke, and R2 tied up and about to cook them, and I'm guessing eat them, and C-3PO is able to... It's not in his programming, but Luke and Han convince him to be able to kind of play as a god, and the Ewoks don't believe him at first, and Luke uses the Force to lift him up, and the Ewoks run away, and they start to untie Luke and Han, and it's no binary sunset moment, but that's one of the moments that I wish I was able to see it in the theater when it originally came out. Just that entire magical moment. It just feels very iconic, and I just love those iconic Star Wars moments where you feel all giddy inside, and it's just like it honestly just feels magical. Like every time I watch a scene, no matter how many times I've seen the film, I just always feel magical inside. Next we're going to move over to the right side with Han Solo. I love Han Solo as a character. You know, we have all the iconic scenes with him with the DL-44, and you can honestly say he's probably the most charismatic, one of the most charismatic Star Wars characters in the whole universe, and that's because of his phenomenal actor Harrison Ford. He portrays the character really well. I'd have to say my favorite scene with Han Solo would definitely have to be the shootout with him and Greedo. And I just love how everybody didn't know, oh, if Greedo shot first and Han Solo shot first, then you know with the different edits in the deluxe editions of the movies, it got changed, and then everybody just asked him all the time. I love him as a character. He's not my favorite, but I understand why people respect him, and he is a phenomenal character. Next we're going to move on to Chewbacca. I love Chewbacca as a character. You know, he has the crossbow, and later in The Force Awakens, you see it turns into an explosive crossbow. Um, he was in, I think, 6 movies now, because he was also in Revenge of the Sith at the end before the Jedi Purge. But my favorite scene would definitely have to be during The Last Jedi, because we've seen the Millennium Falcon fly pretty fancily. You see, even in Force Awakens with Rey flying it, I know a lot of people were upset because she flew it really well. And there's backstory to that. You know, in the Star Wars Before the Awakening book, it's shown that while she was on her stay in Jakku, she had a flight simulator and she was able to fly hundreds of different ships and just go through all that. But I love that we got to see really amazing flying in The Last Jedi when Chewbacca came over to Battle of Crate. And we see Chewbacca come in, entering, the battle seems to be lost. He comes in, entering the Millennium Falcon, shoots one laser bolt out of the Millennium Falcon. It goes through 3 TIE fighters, something we've never seen before. Then we have him able to fly and maneuver underneath the land level of Crate and going throughout the crystal salt mineral thing, and he's just flying and maneuvering and shooting, and just really fantastic. And I love that moment was with him, and that was definitely my favorite moment. I'm glad that Rian Johnson was able to choreograph such a really fantastic scene on top of just a lot of the fantastic scenes in The Last Jedi. Let's move on to, I guess this is the same character, but he is wearing a different outfit. So I guess you could say my favorite moment with X-Wing variation of Luke would have to be during the Battle of Yavin, when he lands the shot of the one shot in a million right through the exhaust port into the Death Star, blowing it up and falling off with it. We hear Alec Guinness's version of Obi-Wan saying, "The Force will be with you always." And I just love that turning point, and it's just such a beautiful moment in the Star Wars saga. And I'm really glad I was able to get this figure. This is probably one of the more expensive figures of the line. Most of the figures I got off of retail, other than the Stormtrooper, I had to buy them off of resale because he wasn't available. But I was able to get this figure at the Star Wars Celebration, and I remember I was able to get 2 of them, and they were $20. And the biggest thing was, I remember a month after, these things were going on eBay for like $300, and people were buying them like hotcakes. So I was so glad I was able to be at the Star Wars Celebration and get one for my own, additionally to the Obi-Wan original 1978 figure. But I love this figure. I love that he has the same blaster that he uses in Empire Strikes Back. And also, interesting fact, the original blaster that he used in Empire Strikes Back actually went on auction for a couple years ago, and I remember the minimum bid was $200,000 or something, but I forgot what it sold at. But I love, again, Luke Skywalker is my favorite character. I love every single different variation of his outfits, and this is a really good figure. And I'm so glad I was at Star Wars Celebration able to get it. So let's move on to probably the most iconic Star Wars character in. He just breaks through everything. Even people that don't watch Star Wars know who this fantastic character is. Every line that he says basically becomes iconic in pop culture and everything. You know, I find your lack of faith disturbing. I am your father. You don't know the power of the dark side. Even down to like the movie that came out 2 years ago, Rogue One. Be careful not to choke on your aspirations. Everything he says becomes iconic, and I'd have to say I have not just one favorite scene with Vader, but three favorite scenes. First, we're going to start with in Empire Strikes Back. And it's not I am your father. It's actually the whole interaction that goes on during that scene. First, we see, you know, Luke and Vader start fighting. And Vader does this really cool thing where he disarms Luke. And then Luke falls down to the carbonite. And he tries to get frozen. And he jumps out. And then the fight goes on for a while. And then Luke tries the same move with the lightsaber. And instead of Darth Vader disarming him, he actually cuts off his hand. And I like that attention to detail that Darth Vader's always adapting and learning and not making the same mistakes. As you can see back when he fought Count Dooku in Attack of the Clones and then again in Revenge of the Sith, he learned from his mistakes. And I just love the attention to detail and how he's always adapting and learning. And that's my first favorite scene with him. Second favorite scene with him would definitely have to be in Return to Jedi when Luke and Darth Vader are fighting, and we get to the moment where Luke runs and he jumps into the dark, and Darth Vader is looking for him, and he says to Luke, if you won't join me, maybe your sister will. And while he's walking, we know the characters, but you just see these black silhouettes of characters, and I just love the way the scene is shot and the way Vader's walking menacingly, and then you see Luke go all mad, and you can see he starts to get a hint of the dark side, but then he says, no, I'm not going to make that decision because I'm a Jedi like my father before me. And I love the piece of music that plays when Luke is fighting Darth Vader, and he just gets really angry, and it's actually probably one of my favorite John Williams pieces in the entire like Star Wars universe or Star Wars saga as a whole. And the third scene would definitely have to be the scene in Rogue One. So I remember when Rogue One came out, I was reading articles that said that the movie was going to end 10 minutes prior to A New Hope. So you see Tarkin call in Vader, and you're expecting Darth Vader to just board the ship like he did at the beginning of A New Hope. And we see Vader's ship fly in, and it's boarding the ship. And I remember thinking, I was just thinking, what is going on? And then we see the room is dark, and obviously the interior in New Hope, it was all white and stuff like that. It wasn't dark, and the LED lights weren't blaring and stuff. And I remember I saw the darkness, and then the guys were screaming, and they were like, help. And they were like, open up. And I remember Vader's lightsaber igniting, and I felt like I was in this dream state. Like, I stopped breathing. My heart was beating faster than I think it's ever beat in his life. And I just love how they were able to take all the abilities and all the different stuff that Vader did the original trilogy, whether it be blocking the laser bolts like he did in Empire Strikes Back, or lifting somebody up with the Force when he did that guy in the meeting when they were discussing the Death Star. And it was just so well choreographed with him just doing some really crazy stuff. Putting a guy up on the roof, cutting him in half, decapitating another guy, blocking 2 laser bolts with 1 lightsaber swipe. And I'm just so glad that we were able to get that moment where we saw Vader in his prime, like his primal form. And I just think it was such a beautiful scene. And that definitely have to be my 3 favorite scenes with Vader. Again, I want to thank you guys for watching my video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and have a very great day.